My son's 38th birthday was supposed to be a joyous occasion. Instead, my daughter-in-law canceled it on me, then secretly planned a lavish party using my credit card, deliberately leaving me out. I said nothing, but when she faced me, expecting my quiet acceptance, she discovered a truth far more inconvenient than a canceled party. Listen to my story, like, share, and tell me where you're listening from. The phone rang, a bright, chirpy sound that cut through the quiet hum of my afternoon. It was Veronica, my daughter-in-law. I picked it up, a smile already forming, expecting the usual pleasantries or perhaps an update on my grandson. Instead, her voice, laced with an almost saccharine sweetness, delivered news that instantly deflated me. "Eleanor, honey, I'm so incredibly sorry," she began, her tone dripping with false regret. "Marcus's birthday party? The one for his 38th? We have to cancel it. His work schedule, you know how demanding it is. He just got called into an urgent project out of state completely last minute. It's a disaster, really." My heart sank. Canceled? Just like that? I'd been looking forward to Marcus's birthday for weeks. My son, my wonderful Marcus, turning 38. It felt like only yesterday I was holding him, a tiny bundle in my arms. I had already bought his gift, a vintage watch, a family heirloom that once belonged to his grandfather, meticulously restored. I had it wrapped in a special blue paper, tied with a silver ribbon, sitting on my dresser, waiting to be presented. I'd even picked out my outfit, a lovely sapphire dress I rarely wore, perfect for a celebratory evening with my family. The disappointment was a heavy weight in my chest. "Oh," I managed, the single syllable barely escaping my lips. "Oh, dear. That's a shame. Is Marcus all right? What about his actual birthday?" Veronica rushed on, her words tumbling out a little too quickly, a little too smoothly. "He's fine, just swamped. He said he'll call you when he can. We'll just have a small, intimate family dinner when he gets back. Nothing big, you know. Just us. Really, Eleanor. Don't worry about a thing. I'll make sure he gives you a call." There was an undertone in her voice, a lightness that struck me as odd, almost a relief. Her answers were too quick, too neat, like she was reading from a script she'd carefully memorized. A tiny seed of suspicion, barely a flicker, began to take root in my mind. After the call, I tried Marcus directly. I knew his work could be demanding, but missing his own birthday entirely seemed unlike him. He always made time, even for a quick call. I dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Marcus. Please leave a message." It was his standard greeting, but hearing it without a ring felt cold, dismissive. He almost always answered my calls, or at the very least, texted me back within the hour. This was unusual, and the seed of suspicion began to sprout. Days turned into a week, and Marcus hadn't called back. I tried to push my unease aside, telling myself Veronica was right. He must be genuinely busy. Life, after all, had a way of throwing unexpected curveballs. Then, about 10 days later, as I sat at my kitchen table, a cup of herbal tea steaming beside me, meticulously reviewing my monthly credit card statement, my eyes snagged on an unfamiliar charge. $5,000. My brow furrowed. $5,000 to elite event planners. Elite event planners? I certainly hadn't planned any elite events. I paid my bills promptly, every month, and I knew exactly where my money went. This was foreign. A cold wave of recognition washed over me as I remembered. 2 years ago, Marcus had faced a difficult period, a financial setback that left him and Veronica struggling. In a gesture of maternal support, wanting to ease their burden, I had added Veronica as an authorized user to my primary credit card. It was meant for emergencies, for grocery runs if things got tight, never for anything extravagant. She had seemed so grateful back then, so appreciative of the lifeline. Now, the thought that she might have abused that trust sent a chill down my spine. My hand trembled slightly as I picked up the phone and dialed my credit card company. After navigating the automated system, I finally reached a customer service representative. "I'm calling about a charge on my statement," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady, "to elite event planners. Could you tell me who authorized this particular transaction?" The representative's voice was bright and efficient. "Certainly, ma'am. Let me check for you. Yes, I see a charge for $5,000, posted 8 days ago. It was authorized by Veronica Patterson, the additional cardholder on your account. Veronica." The confirmation landed like a physical blow. There was no longer any doubt. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic rhythm of disbelief and dawning anger. What on earth was she planning? Driven by a desperate need for answers, I immediately called Elite Event Planners. The woman who answered, her voice bubbly and enthusiastic, confirmed everything I had begun to dread. "Elite Event Planners. How can I help you?" "Yes," I said, trying to mimic a casual tone despite the turmoil inside me. "I'm calling about an event for a Marcus Patterson. I believe it's scheduled for tomorrow?" "Oh, yes," she exclaimed, her voice practically singing. "Mr. Patterson's 38th birthday celebration? It's going to be absolutely spectacular. Everything is in place. Catering for 50 guests, exquisite floral arrangements, a live band, a bespoke birthday cake. The works. Mrs. Patterson has impeccable taste. It's going to be a truly lavish affair. Lavish, 50 guests, a live band. Tomorrow." The words echoed in my mind, each one a hammer blow. Veronica had told me Marcus's party was canceled because he was out of state, working. She had described a small, intimate family dinner upon his return. And now, this. A meticulously planned, grand celebration, funded by my money. Taking place tomorrow, on the very day she'd told me it was off. The realization hit me with the force of a tidal wave. Veronica hadn't simply canceled Marcus's birthday party for me. She had deliberately lied. She had used my credit card, the one I had given her in a moment of kindness, to fund a lavish celebration for my own son. A celebration she had meticulously excluded me from. It wasn't just about the $5,000, though that was a significant amount for me, a widow on a fixed income. It was the deliberate cruelty, the calculated manipulation, the blatant disrespect. I could almost hear her concocting her excuses to Marcus and the other guests. "Oh, Eleanor sends her love, but she wasn't feeling up to it, or she had a prior engagement. You know how busy she is." She would paint a picture of me willingly absent, while I was left here, oblivious and heartbroken, nursing a canceled party that never truly was. A single tear tracked a path down my cheek, then another. The hurt was deep, a searing wound in my chest. How could someone be so callous, so utterly devoid of empathy? My initial sadness and shock slowly began to curdle into something colder, something harder. The tears dried on my face, leaving a tight, prickly sensation. My jaw set, a familiar stubbornness I hadn't felt in years rising to the surface. I looked down at my hands, clasped tightly on the kitchen table, the knuckles white. No. I would not quietly accept Veronica's narrative. I would not allow her to rewrite the story of my son's birthday, or my role in his life. She had made a grave mistake. Underestimating the gentle, unassuming mother-in-law she thought she could easily dismiss and exploit. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The night stretched endlessly before me, a canvas for the churning thoughts that refused to settle. Sleep was an impossible luxury. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Veronica's overly sweet smile, heard her rushed excuses, and then the event planner's cheerful description of a lavish affair. The betrayal felt like a living thing, a viper coiled in my gut, hissing its poison. Anger, cold and resolute, had replaced the initial shock and tears. I wasn't just hurt. I was offended, disrespected, and utterly determined to understand the full scope of Veronica's deceit. My mind raced, piecing together fragments, searching for a plan. I needed more than just a confirmation from the credit card company. I needed to see it for myself. As dawn broke, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and gold, I was already dressed. My resolve hardened with each sip of coffee. I drove to Marcus and Veronica's upscale neighborhood, the streets quiet in the early morning light. Parking my car a few blocks away, tucked discreetly behind a row of manicured hedges, I settled in to watch. It felt strange, almost cinematic, to be staking out my own son's house, but the need for undeniable proof outweighed any discomfort. Soon, the quiet street began to stir. Around mid-morning, the first van arrived, emblazoned with a catering company's logo. Then came a truck overflowing with vibrant floral arrangements. I watched, a knot tightening in my stomach, as large white roses and delicate blue hydrangeas were carefully unloaded. Marcus's favorite flowers. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. I had unknowingly paid for these, for his own birthday party, which I was excluded from. More vehicles followed, a sound equipment van for a band, a specialized bakery truck, even a valet service setting up cones. The scale of the operation was undeniable, a stark contrast to Veronica's canceled party. As the afternoon wore on, guests began to arrive. Elegant cars pulled up, disgorging couples in festive attire. I recognized some faces. Longtime family friends, Marcus's colleagues, even a few of Veronica's relatives whom I hadn't seen in ages. Each familiar face was a fresh sting. These people would surely notice my absence. What story had Veronica concocted for them? The thought gnawed at me. I couldn't bear the uncertainty any longer. I needed to hear it, unvarnished, from someone present. I pulled out my phone and dialed Brenda, my oldest and dearest friend. Brenda had a daughter, Chloe, who was roughly Marcus's age, and often moved in the same social circles. "Brenda, honey, how are you?" I started, feigning a casualness I didn't feel. After a few pleasantries, I steered the conversation carefully. "I was just thinking, I heard something about a party recently. Chloe didn't happen to mention anything, did she?" I'm always so out of the loop these days. Brenda, bless her heart, didn't disappoint. She called me back within the hour, her voice tinged with genuine concern. "Eleanor, I just spoke with Chloe. She was at Marcus's party yesterday, said it was quite the affair. But she was really surprised you weren't there. She asked Veronica about it, and Veronica said, well, she said you had a bit of a medical episode recently and weren't quite up to attending. Is everything all right, dear? A medical episode." The audacity of the lie took my breath away. It was so perfectly crafted, designed to evoke sympathy for Veronica while casting me as frail, unreliable, and conveniently absent. My fury ignited, burning hot and fierce. I was perfectly healthy. Probably healthier than Veronica herself. Without a moment's hesitation, I called Dr. Olson's office. Olivia, the receptionist, knew me well. "Olivia, it's Eleanor. I need a small favor, darling. If anyone, and I mean anyone, calls or inquires about my health in the next few days, I want you to confirm that I am, and have been, in absolutely perfect health. No medical episodes, no issues whatsoever. Can you do that for me?" Olivia, ever discreet and loyal, assured me she would. One lie, at least, was now neutralized. But the medical episode revelation ignited another, even deeper suspicion. If Veronica was willing to lie so elaborately about this, what else had she been doing? That night, and for the following few days, I embarked on a deeper, more systematic investigation into my credit card statements. I pulled up a full year's worth, meticulously scrutinizing every single charge, not just the big ones, but the smaller, less noticeable transactions. What I found chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just the $5,000 for the party. Buried among the legitimate charges for groceries and household items, there were dozens of smaller, unauthorized purchases. $200 for boutique children's clothing. Likely for my grandson, Leo. but certainly not from the budget I had in mind for emergencies. $150 at a high-end restaurant, not one Marcus and Veronica usually frequented. Several charges for expensive cosmetics. A $200 spa day. And more, much more. A steady trickle of small, insidious thefts, adding up to nearly $2,000 over the last 12 months alone. She had been systematically siphoning money from me, little by little, knowing I wouldn't notice the smaller amounts. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a sustained, calculated exploitation. A few days after the party, my phone finally rang with Marcus's number. My heart leaped, then settled into a calm resolve. "Hello, darling," I said, trying to keep my voice even. He sounded tired, almost weary. "Mom? Hey. Sorry I haven't called. This work trip has been insane. I just got back. Listen, Veronica told me about your medical episode around my birthday. Are you really okay? She said you weren't up to coming to the party." His voice was laced with concern, but also a hint of confusion. "Marcus," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "I am perfectly healthy. I haven't had any medical episodes. In fact, the last time I spoke with Veronica, she told me your party was canceled entirely because you were out of state on a work trip. That's why I wasn't there." There was a long silence on the other end, punctuated only by his shaky exhale. "Canceled? But the party was yesterday, Mom." It was a huge surprise. Veronica planned it all. His bewilderment was palpable, a raw wound in his voice. He was struggling to reconcile the two wildly conflicting stories, caught between his wife's elaborate fabrication and my simple, undeniable truth. "I know it was, dear," I said softly, my voice filled with a quiet certainty. "Look, Marcus, I need you to come over. Alone. There are some things we need to discuss. Things about Veronica that you need to know. Things that are very disturbing." The doorbell chimed, a somber sound in the late afternoon quiet. I opened it to find Marcus. His shoulders slumped, eyes heavy with a mixture of confusion and exhaustion. The vibrant spark I remembered from his younger years seemed dimmed, replaced by a weary resignation. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world, or perhaps the weight of a monumental lie. "Come in, dear," I said, stepping aside. He sank onto the sofa, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Mom, what is going on?" he asked, his voice raw. I sat opposite him, my hands clasped in my lap. On the coffee table, I had laid out the evidence. My credit card statements, meticulously highlighted. The $5,000 charge to elite event planners, circled in red, followed by the numerous smaller, insidious charges that had accumulated over the past year. Beside them, I had a printed copy of the email confirmation from elite event planners, detailing the lavish party. "Marcus," I began softly, picking up the statements. "Veronica told me your birthday party was canceled because you were called out of state. She said you'd have a small, intimate dinner when you returned." I pushed the elite event planner's confirmation across the table to him. This, however, tells a very different story. A lavish party for 50 guests, on the very day she told me it was canceled, paid for with my money I allowed her access to for emergencies, not for grand celebrations I was deliberately excluded from. He picked up the printout, his eyes scanning the details. His face paled. But she said she wanted to surprise me. She knew I'd be busy with work. She just wanted to handle everything. She told me she was worried about you, Mom, that you'd been feeling unwell, and she didn't want to burden you with planning. "A medical episode, wasn't it?" I asked, a hint of steel in my voice. The same medical episode she conveniently told Brenda's daughter, Chloe, about, so I wouldn't be missed. "Marcus, I'm perfectly healthy. My doctor's office can confirm it. And since when does protecting someone from their own son's birthday party involve lying about a cancellation and then secretly using their credit card to fund it?" He struggled, grasping at straws. trying to reconcile the image of his loving wife with the cold, hard facts laid before him. Maybe she was just trying to keep things simple? You know how stressed I get with big events. I shook my head gently. There's nothing simple about $5,000 for an event you didn't even know existed. And another $2,000 slowly siphoned from my account over the last year, for spa days and expensive clothes. Look at these charges, Marcus. These aren't for groceries or an urgent bill. These are for a life she's been funding with my resources. All while telling you things were tight. His gaze flickered to the smaller charges, then back to my face. The disbelief warred with something darker, a dawning comprehension that was painful to witness. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting out a heavy sigh. I need to talk to her, Mom. I have to understand. He stood to leave, promising to confront Veronica. But as he looked at me, I saw the hesitation, the ingrained loyalty of a man who had been married for over a decade. He wanted to believe her, wanted to find an explanation that didn't shatter his world. I knew, with a mother's intuition, that his confrontation would be met with tears, denial, and a fresh wave of manipulation. He left, and the silence in my home felt heavier than before. Over the next 2 weeks, my fears were confirmed. Marcus's calls became less frequent, and when he did call, his voice was strained, distant. He mentioned in passing that Veronica was really upset about my accusations, that she felt misunderstood and attacked. The familiar pattern of blame shifting and emotional manipulation was clearly at play, and Marcus, still entangled, was allowing himself to be swayed. One afternoon, my grandson Leo called, his voice bright and enthusiastic. "Grandma, guess what? Mommy says if Daddy works really hard, we might go to Disney World next year. She says money's really tight right now. But maybe if we're super good." The call ended, leaving me with a chilling contrast. Tight money, Veronica told Leo, while she was spending thousands of my dollars on lavish parties and personal luxuries. The irony was almost comical, if it weren't so deeply infuriating. That evening, I found myself looking through old photo albums. Pictures of Marcus as a boy, then with his father, then with me. I noticed a subtle pattern emerge in the photos taken after Veronica entered his life. She was always there, always close, sometimes even physically inserting herself between Marcus and me, or between Marcus and his father in group shots. It wasn't overt, but it was there. A quiet, almost territorial positioning. A slow, insidious shift had taken place over the years. Subtle enough to be unnoticed, yet profoundly effective in subtly altering the dynamics of our family. Suddenly, an idea sparked in my mind, bold and unexpected. A trip. Not just any trip, but a journey back to our roots. My late husband's family, Marcus's father's side, was from Greece. He had always dreamed of taking Marcus there, showing him the ancient ruins, the vibrant culture, the sparkling Aegean Sea. But life, and then illness, had intervened. This was it, a way to reconnect, to remind Marcus of who he was, of his true family, away from Veronica's influence. The very next morning, I drove to the local travel agency. Diane, the owner, greeted me warmly. "Eleanor, what a surprise. Planning an adventure?" "Indeed, Diane," I said, a determined glint in my eye. "I want to book a 2-week package to Greece. For 3 people. Myself, my son Marcus, and my grandson Leo." I explained the kind of trip I envisioned. A blend of historical sites, beautiful beaches, and authentic experiences. Diane, sensing my urgency, quickly found an ideal package for the upcoming month. I paid the full amount up front, my heart thrumming with a newfound purpose. This was more than a vacation. It was an investment in my family. I called Marcus again, asking him to come over, stressing the urgency. He arrived looking even more haggard than before, dark circles under his eyes. "Mom, please tell me this isn't about Veronica again." I just can't. It is, and it isn't, I interrupted gently. Look, dear. I've booked us a trip. A 2-week all-expenses-paid trip to Greece. For you, me, and Leo. I watched his face, the flicker of surprise, then incredulity. Finally, a spark of genuine excitement he hadn't shown in weeks. It's what your father always wanted to do with you, to show you our heritage. A chance for us, 3 generations, to reconnect. His excitement quickly dissolved into apprehension. Greece? That sounds amazing, Mom. But I can't just leave Veronica. She'd be furious. I met his gaze, my voice steady and firm. I'm not asking Veronica to come, Marcus. This is for us, for our family, for you to have time with your son, away from all the stress you've been under, to remember what's truly important. I used a subtle appeal, a gentle nudge toward his father's memory, his own unspoken desire for adventure, and the obvious need for a break. You need this, Marcus. We all do. A chance to breathe, to be yourselves, without any interference. He looked torn, the battle visible in his tired eyes. He wanted to go, desperately. But the chains of his marriage held him. He promised to think about it, to talk to Veronica, though I knew what that conversation would entail. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Marcus. I could hear a muffled, angry voice shouting in the background, unmistakably Veronica's. But Marcus's voice, though still weary, held a note of newfound resolve. Mom, he said, we're going to Greece. Just us. The week leading up to our departure for Greece was a blur of activity. Passports were checked, bags were packed, and I made sure Leo had everything he needed for a comfortable and exciting journey. Amidst the practicalities, Veronica's anger, as expected, bubbled to the surface. She called twice, her voice sharp and accusatory, cutting through my usually calm demeanor. Eleanor, what do you think you're doing? She fumed during the first call. Her words barely contained. Taking Marcus and Leo on some extravagant trip? You're undermining me. You're trying to turn them against me. I took a deep breath, refusing to rise to her bait. Veronica, I replied, my voice steady. Marcus is a grown man. He made his own decision to come on this trip. And as for Leo, this is a wonderful educational opportunity for him to learn about his heritage. I think it's important for a child to understand where he comes from. I paused, letting the silence hang. It's a trip for my son and grandson. There's nothing improper about it. I could hear her sputtering on the other end, but I simply wished her a good week and ended the call. Her second call was equally vitriolic, but I kept my responses calm and factual, asserting Marcus's autonomy and Leo's enrichment, leaving her to stew in her own indignation. Finally, the day arrived. The moment we stepped off the plane in Athens, I felt a shift. The air, crisp and ancient, seemed to carry away the tension Marcus had been holding onto for so long. I watched him as we waited for our transfer. His shoulders, usually hunched, relaxed, his brow, perpetually furrowed with worry, smoothed out. It was a genuine relaxation I hadn't seen in him since before he married Veronica. Leo, naturally, was a whirlwind of infectious excitement, his small face pressed against the car window, eyes wide at the bustling streets and unfamiliar architecture. "Grandma, look, is that where Hercules lived?" he exclaimed, pointing at a distant ruin. Marcus laughed, a full, unrestrained sound that brought tears to my eyes. It was the first time I'd seen him truly smile, not just a polite social curve of the lips, in what felt like months, maybe even years. That sound alone made the entire trip worthwhile. Our first evening was magical. We dined at a small taverna nestled on a hillside, with an unobstructed view of the illuminated Parthenon glowing majestically against the twilight sky. As we savored fresh seafood and traditional Greek dishes, I began to weave tales of Marcus's grandfather, my late husband, and his family's deep roots in Greece. I spoke of ancient philosophers, legendary heroes, and the vibrant spirit of the Greek people. Both Marcus and Leo were utterly captivated, leaning forward, hanging on my every word. It was beautiful to see Marcus's genuine interest, a thirst for his own history that had been buried under the demands of his current life. The next day, we explored the Acropolis, walking among the ruins of temples that had stood for millennia. Marcus was completely immersed, asking questions, reading the informational plaques, and taking photos not just to send to Veronica or post on social media, but for himself. To remember the feeling, the history, the sheer wonder of the place. He was fully present, a luxury he rarely afforded himself at home. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the ancient stones, Marcus turned to me, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Mom," he said, "this is incredible. We should make this a regular thing, a family tradition." My heart swelled with hope. This was the Marcus I knew, the one who valued connection and shared experiences. That evening, after another delightful dinner, Marcus called home to check in. I tried not to listen, but Veronica's voice, sharp and demanding, carried clearly through the phone. "Marcus, where are you? I've been calling. We need to talk about these credit card bills. They're outrageous. I don't know what your mother is trying to pull, but this is causing serious problems for us." Her tone was accusatory, her words a clear echo of her earlier calls to me. I watched Marcus's face as he listened. The lightness that had begun to blossom in him slowly drained away, replaced by the familiar tension. His jaw tightened, his eyes clouded over. He mumbled a few placating words, promised to call back later, and quickly ended the call. The magic of the day seemed to dissipate around him. His shoulders slumped once more, and he looked profoundly troubled, his earlier joy completely gone. The third day, we took a ferry to a picturesque Greek island, its whitewashed houses clinging to cliffs above the turquoise Aegean Sea. As we sat on a quiet beach, watching Leo splash happily in the shallow water, Marcus finally broke his silence. "Mom," he began, picking up a smooth pebble and turning it over in his fingers. Did you ever feel like you were walking on eggshells with Dad?" He didn't look at me, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Because that's how I feel with Veronica. Like one wrong word, one wrong move, and everything just explodes." My heart ached for him. It was the admission I had been waiting for, the crack in the facade he had built around his marriage. "No, darling," I said softly, reaching out to touch his arm. "Your father and I had our disagreements, like any couple. But it was never like that. Marriage shouldn't feel like a negotiation where you're always losing. It should be a partnership, a safe place where you can be yourself, speak your mind, and feel supported." He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. Then, as if compelled, he began to rationalize. "To defend her, even now. She just worries. Mom. About money, about Leo's future, about our social standing. She wants the best for us." I let him finish, then gently challenged him. "Marcus, who decided Veronica should be the one to manage all these aspects? Who decided she was the sole arbiter of what's best for your family? To the point where she needs to lie and manipulate to achieve it? Who decided that your mother, your own mother, should be excluded from your birthday, and your money used without your knowledge or consent?" He flinched, as if struck. He had never considered it from that angle. He had simply accepted Veronica's narrative, her self-appointed role as the family's gatekeeper and decision-maker. The question hung in the air, weighty and profound, prompting a deep realization within him that was almost physically painful to witness. He stared out at the sea, the vibrant blue reflecting the turmoil in his eyes. That night, Marcus was restless. I could hear him pacing in his room for a long time. Later, just as I was drifting off, I heard his phone ringing, loud and insistent. It rang again and again. 6 times, I counted. Then, finally, silence. A quiet click indicated he had turned his phone off. He had made a choice. My story is far from over, And the truth about Veronica is even darker than you can imagine. Don't miss what happens next. Like, share, and subscribe to follow this journey of betrayal and unexpected revelations. The next day, our journey took us to a small, ancient village, nestled in the rugged hills of Crete, the very place Marcus's ancestors had called home. We sat in a sun-dappled square, sipping strong Greek coffee, as an old man with eyes that held centuries of wisdom spoke to us about the importance of family, of roots, of the unbreakable bonds that tie generations together. His words, delivered in a melodic blend of Greek and broken English, resonated deeply with Marcus. He was quiet, reflective, looking out at the olive groves, contemplating what family truly meant in the context of his own life. It was then, with a deep sigh, that Marcus pulled out his phone. He hesitated for a moment, then turned it back on. Instantly, it erupted. A cascade of notifications flooded the screen. 14 missed calls, 23 furious text messages. They were all from Veronica. I didn't need to read them to know their content. I could almost hear her voice, sharp and biting, accusing him of selfishness, irresponsibility, and abandonment. She's really angry, Marcus murmured, scrolling through the vitriol, his face tightening with each message. I kept my voice calm, even. What do you think about what she's saying, Marcus? Do you feel selfish? Irresponsible? I wasn't telling him what to think. I was guiding him to his own conclusions, allowing him to measure her words against the genuine peace and connection he had found here with his son and me. He paused, a long silence stretching between us. He looked at Leo, who was happily chasing a stray cat, then back at the ancient stone buildings, then finally at me. I think maybe I need to start making some decisions for myself, he said slowly, the words sounding foreign even to his own ears, but filled with a growing conviction. 8 days into our trip, during a leisurely breakfast of fresh fruit and yogurt, Veronica's shrill voice once again pierced our newfound tranquility. Marcus's phone rang, displaying her name. He answered, and even across the table, I could hear her complaints loud and clear. Leo is missing so much school, Marcus. Do you have any idea how bad this looks? And these bills, they're piling up. You need to come home and deal with this, now. Marcus's shoulders tensed. He offered a few weak reassurances, but his composure was visibly shaken. After he hung up, I asked gently, "Are there problems with bills, dear?" He sighed, running a hand over his face. "Veronica handles most of our finances, Mom. She usually takes care of all that. I trust her to manage things." A flicker of concern, cold and sharp, went through me. "When was the last time you actually looked at your bank statements, Marcus? Really looked at them?" I kept my tone neutral, planting a seed, but letting it germinate on its own. He looked away, a vague unease settling on his features. That afternoon, as we explored another charming village, Marcus's phone buzzed with a new message. He glanced at it, and his brow furrowed in confusion. "Mom, look at this." He handed me the phone. The text was from a contact saved as Kevin. It read, "Hey Marcus, just checking in about that $3,000 loan you asked for. Everything okay? Let me know when you need it." Marcus was utterly bewildered. "Loan? I didn't ask Kevin for any money. What is this?" He started scrolling through his recent messages, his face growing paler with each discovery. There were multiple similar texts, sent from his phone to various friends and colleagues. Polite, yet urgent requests for small loans, citing unexpected expenses, all sent while we were in Greece. "Veronica has all my passwords," Marcus admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "For safety," she said. "In case of emergencies, she could access anything." My blood ran cold. This was no longer just about a credit card or a party. This was identity theft, manipulation on a scale far more insidious than I had imagined. "Marcus, you need to call your bank." Immediately. And freeze everything. He sprang into action, dialing his bank's customer service line. I watched as he spoke, his face draining of color, his voice growing increasingly strained. He moved from one representative to another, his questions becoming more frantic. Then he learned it. Significant ATM withdrawals had been made from their joint account, several times, near their home, while he was out of the country. The full, horrifying picture began to snap into place. Veronica hadn't just used my card. She had been systematically raiding their own accounts, using Marcus's identity to solicit money from his friends, all while complaining about tight money and piling bills to keep him in the dark and under her control. I looked at my son, his face a mask of shock and utter devastation. His world, built on trust and assumed partnership, was crumbling before his eyes. He had been so blind, so trusting. "Marcus," I said, my voice firm now, though my heart ached for him. "Do you see it now? The $5,000 party, paid for with my money, while I was told it was canceled. The smaller, systematic thefts from my credit card. The lies about my medical episode to exclude me. The constant complaints about tight money while she drained your accounts and used your identity to beg money from your friends. The way she has slowly isolated you from everyone who genuinely cares, including me. She has controlled your finances, your social life, even your perception of reality." I took his hands in mine, looking him straight in the eyes. "This isn't marriage, Marcus. This is manipulation. This is control. And she's been doing it for a very long time." Marcus sat quietly on the small stone bench, the full weight of Veronica's systematic control and betrayal crashing down on him. His eyes, usually clouded with an underlying anxiety, now held a raw, exposed vulnerability. He looked like a man waking from a long, disturbing dream. Just then, his phone buzzed again. Another text from Veronica. This one claimed an emergency at Leo's school, demanding his immediate attention. Without a word, Marcus dialed Leo's school in the States. After a brief conversation, he hung up, a grin set to his jaw. "Another lie," he stated, his voice flat. "Everything's fine at school. She just wants me to call her back." He looked at me then, and in his eyes, there was a new sense of wonder, a horrifying clarity. "She's been lying about everything, hasn't she, Mom?" The next 4 days in Greece were a whirlwind, but not of sightseeing. Marcus spent countless hours on the phone, speaking to his bank, his friends, his colleagues, and even Leo's school. Each call peeled back another layer of Veronica's elaborate web of deceit. He confirmed the unauthorized ATM withdrawals, the fake loan requests, the petty excuses, and the continuous financial drain. The revelations were devastating, but with each confirmation, a new resolve hardened in his eyes. He was no longer just sad or confused. He was determined. "I need to confront her, Mom," he said, his voice firm. "And I need to rethink everything about my marriage." The words were heavy, but they carried the weight of a man reclaiming his own agency. On the long flight home, Marcus leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. "This trip changed everything for me, Mom," he confessed, his voice quiet. "I don't think I realized how much of myself I'd lost. How good it feels to just be Marcus again. Not just Veronica's husband or Leo's dad, but me. Just me." My heart swelled with pride and relief. The journey had worked. At the airport, Veronica was waiting. She greeted us with a bright, artificial smile, her eyes darting between Marcus and me, assessing the situation like a predator sizing up its prey. She hugged Leo, a little too tightly, then extended a polite, brief embrace to Marcus. Her gaze lingered on me, a barely perceptible flicker of suspicion in her eyes. During the drive home, Veronica launched into a monologue of minor grievances and difficulties she had faced while we were away. The oven had acted up, the internet had been spotty, Leo had been difficult, but Marcus listened differently now. He heard the subtle exaggerations, the self-pitying tones, the familiar rhythm of her complaints. Each word was a tiny thread, weaving into the larger tapestry of her manipulation, and he was finally seeing it for what it was. As we pulled into their driveway, Marcus turned off the engine, plunging the car into silence. He looked directly at Veronica. "Veronica," he began, his voice surprisingly steady, "we need to talk about the money missing from our joint account and about the loan requests you sent to my friends from my phone while I was in Greece." Veronica's bright smile faltered. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. For a split second, she looked utterly caught. Then, with a sudden, jerky movement, she swerved the car, narrowly missing the mailbox, and slammed on the brakes. The abrupt stop jolted us all. Her face, contorted with rage, turned to Marcus. "How dare you?" she shrieked. "You think you know everything? I did it for us. For the family's good. You're too naive, Marcus. You wouldn't understand. I had to take control because you never would." Marcus met her furious gaze with a newfound resolve. "No, Veronica," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "You didn't do it for the family's good. You did it for your own control. You destroyed our trust, our finances, and you almost destroyed our family. You think I'm too naive to handle things? Fine. From now on, I'll handle them myself." Over the next few weeks, Marcus systematically began to reclaim control of his life. He changed all his passwords, initiated a forensic audit of their accounts, and took over managing all their finances. Veronica's reactions were a predictable storm of alternating tears, rage, and threats. But Marcus, fortified by his experiences in Greece, remained steadfast. One afternoon, Veronica called me, her voice dripping with venom. "You poisoned him, Eleanor. You turned him against me." "Veronica," I replied calmly, "Marcus is not a child to be poisoned. He is a grown man who simply opened his eyes. And he did so because of your actions, not mine." I knew my words would only fuel her anger, but the truth needed to be spoken. 6 months later, Marcus filed for divorce. His petition meticulously documented all of Veronica's financial manipulation, the credit card fraud, the unauthorized withdrawals, and the fake loan requests. He sought joint custody of Leo, ensuring he would remain a central, loving presence in his son's life. Veronica's vindictive attempts to turn Leo and others against Marcus failed, largely because Marcus now possessed an unshakable clarity about his life and priorities. He was no longer the confused, manipulated man he had been. A year after our life-changing trip, Marcus, Leo, and I found ourselves celebrating at a vibrant Greek festival in our own town. Leo, now more confident and full of spirit, proudly used his Greek name for grandmother, Yaya, as he asked, "Yaya, can we go back to Greece soon? I really miss it." Marcus, a truly relaxed smile gracing his face, wrapped an arm around Leo. "Absolutely, son. We'll make it a tradition." He looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Mom," he said, "I'm so sorry I let Veronica keep us apart for so long. It will never happen again." Another 6 months passed, and Marcus introduced me to Clara, a kind, warm teacher he had met. Clara was genuinely lovely, and when she learned about our Greek heritage, her eyes lit up. She embraced me, embraced Leo, and listened with genuine interest as we spoke of our trip. Watching her, I realized the profound difference between people. Veronica had tried to erase me, to cut me out of my son's life. Clara, on the other hand, saw value in family, in roots, and in shared love. Driving home that evening, a profound sense of peace settled over me. The journey had been long, painful, and fraught with unexpected revelations, but it had also led to healing, to reconnection, and to a renewed sense of self for my son. I had not sought revenge, not truly. I had simply refused to be silenced, refused to let a toxic person steal my joy and my family. And in the end, living well, genuinely well, proved to be the most satisfying revenge of all.